Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. This is my 1969 Pontiac 2+2 427 4-speed. It was manufactured on October 4th, 1968 by General Motors, delivered by train a few days later to a dealership where my dad bought it as his first new car. 16 years later, I learned to drive in it and it became my first car. Here we are 49 years, 51 weeks, and a few days later, and it's about to turn a big 5-0, so what better time than ever to make some needless changes to the car. It's that time. I can't deny it's kind of a cool feeling to still have my very first car, especially when that car was also my dad's first new car, and he's long since passed on, so it's nice to have that connection as well. Plus, years ago when I was out cruising as a young man, I went to the local A&W, pulled in, and met the most adorable car hop I'd ever seen, and I've been married to her for 25 years as well, so it seems that all of my memories are somehow tied up in this car in one way or another. In those days, before vanity plates, the best you could do is to try to get a low number. So when my dad finally got this 116, he hung on to it forever, renewing it year after year. After passing the car on to me, I continued renewing the same number, and so the car has had the same number for 50 years. If you've watched other videos in the Dave's Garage series, you may have seen the plates hanging up on the wall. In about '77, they switched to stickers, but I kept all the original plates, and they hang on the wall. One of our family traditions growing up was to take a photo with the new plate when it arrived each year. Here on the left, you can see my dad and I in about 1971 installing the plates, and in 1999 on the right, my son and I doing the same. He's actually back from college, so we can do the same thing on the 50th anniversary as well. So if you're so fond of the car, Dave, why are you taking it apart 3 days before its 50th birthday? Well, the reason is I installed the Holley Sniper EFI system on it, which I'm actually pretty fond of. It runs quite well. I've got some cold start tuning left to do on it, but other than that, it's pretty happy with it. The thing is, they went with non-progressive linkage, which means when you touch the throttle, all 4 barrels open pretty much immediately at the same rate. And being non-progressive, when you've got this much torque, this much gear in a car like this, it makes it really hard to drive it properly in first gear. So what I would like to do is make the linkage progressive so that the first 2 barrels open, and then later on through the throttle movement, the second 2 barrels open. And that's the change we're going to make so I can take it on a 50th birthday cruise without looking like a tool. I'll try to demonstrate what I mean about the throttle action. Keep in mind the front bores are on this throttle shaft and the rear bores are on this throttle shaft. Watch the rear throttle action as soon as I move the rod. No matter how gently you try to roll into the throttle on this car, all 4 barrels are going to respond immediately. And that's caused by design by this tie bar between the 2 shaft assemblies. What we're going to do is use up some of this slack in here to make it progressive so that this can move before it activates this. You may have noticed this extension piece on here. This is not from Holley. This is something I added initially to try to soften the throttle by making the pivot point further away from, I guess, the axis. But it was not enough to make a difference. I mean, it made a difference, but it didn't solve the problem. So we need to do proper progressive linkage. Removing the linkage rod is actually surprisingly simple. It's retained by a simple cotter pin washer arrangement. The washer will drop when we pull the cotter pin. Inevitably, we will retrieve it. And the pin, which we will not reuse, but must keep track of, and the rod pops out that easily. As per usual, installation is reversing the steps that you went through already. So that means installing the linkage rod. Notice it goes into a new location, the upper hole in this case. And then insert the new cotter pin from the kit because you don't want to reuse cotter pins. Now with the revised linkage, watch the rear as the tie bar slides within the slot at first before anything is activated. So you have all this travel, which is just the front bores, before it activates the rear, which would happen here. So any further movement pulls the rears. So at this point, it's rear and front, but up here it's just front. And that's exactly what we want. One nice thing about these setups is the degree to which they will hide the fact that you've installed fuel injection for the rest of the world. As you can see with the air cleaner back in place, it's not even immediately evident that there is fuel injection on this car. And that's kind of the way I like to keep it, period correct, but up to date. I make concessions to safety all the time versus originality, but where I can, I try to keep it looking the part. And that simple change made in just a few minutes should really change the personality of the car and make it much simpler to drive, especially in traffic and in slow-speed city situations. So this video was a little on the short side and the project perhaps a little on the simple side, but I'm really testing the waters to see what the appetite is for the mechanical side versus the electronic side, and that's something you'll have to let me know. The projects on the shop side run from the simple, like linkage changes, all the way up through twin-turbo 1500 horsepower big block strapped to the dyno with wastegates and blow-off valves and then fuel injection, trying to keep it all from blowing up. So really it depends what you want to see is what I managed to show you, because we're going to do it anyway, so you might as well film it. One of the challenges for any young channel is that you have to have these pleas to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. So please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and then you'll find out what happens on the car's 50th birthday. I don't know what that is. That's in the future. But I know none of my kids can drive a stick, and this is a stick. Should I do that? Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm just going to definitely not do it in this car. But I've got a 69 Camaro with an LS3 and a TKO 600 that I've got two kids that have never driven a stick. We'll see how that goes. If there's sufficient interest, ring the bell and you'll get the notification when they try. One common thread that does seem to run through almost all of my shop projects is a touch of nostalgia. And yet I'm also an early adopter, technology-loving kind of guy at the same time. That's why I really enjoy projects that incorporate both a nostalgic aspect and some new technologies, particularly if I can learn from it. A good example is my ESP32 Spectrum Analyzer. Although it uses a brand new 240 MHz 32-bit microcontroller with multiple processing cores and so on. That's all for the sake of an LED light show that would have made me king of the 80s if I could have pulled it off 30 years ago. We've also got the repair, restoration, and upgrading of my Commodore PET 2001 and the unboxing and setup of a brand new Model 1 TRS-80 that I found on eBay. Not only do I get it up and running, but we add Ethernet to the main board and put it live on the internet so you can log into the TRS-80. And that's the kind of strange combination of old and new technology that for some reason I find kind of compelling and a great deal of fun. And this is my fun phase. A few months back, we swapped a late model Corvette powertrain into a 69 Camaro, and that freed up a ZZ502 engine that had previously been in the car. When you've got a big block and no car, and no room for another car, there's only one thing to do, and that's to build a dyno hero. My goal was 1,000 horsepower for $1,500, not counting the motor and injection that came out of the car. I either crushed that goal or scattered the thing across the dyno cell trying, or maybe both, but you'll have to subscribe to find out. Recently, I used my Amazon points to buy their 1,000 watt e-bike kit and a top-of-the-line 48 volt lithium-ion battery in order to max out my old Schwinn suspension mountain bike. But will that bike carry me up and down the mean suburban hills and inclines? Should you build your own following my recipe? Keep an eye out for that episode as well. In the LED light strip project, I demonstrate my sealing soldering safety strategies and how to properly stick the landing when things don't go as planned. Is it really possible to power a big angle grinder from a 9-volt battery? I'd give it a shot. Let's just say it looks like you can do it, so you can annoy Isaac Newton as you impress your friends with that one. I had a spare 200 psi pressure sensor, and so that led to a circuit that controls the shop air compressor such that it only runs when somebody is physically present in the shop, and it monitors the pressure and does some other safety checks. And of course, it's so I can make it live on the internet so I can monitor the compressor from the beach for some reason. Every so often there's an old part made from unobtainium that I need to reproduce. You've probably seen enough 3D printing of plastic gewgaws, but I'm going to produce new emblems from both aluminum and super hard 304 stainless steel, so check that one out. You heard me mention the Camaro earlier, and I primarily use it as my test bed for retrofitting modern technology into older vehicles. It's currently sporting a completely new 2010 Corvette LS3 435 horsepower powertrain, and there are a number of upcoming projects for it. The goal is to give this 50-year-old classic the manners of a new car while maintaining the classic looks. I do a lot of component and sub-assembly restoration, so from time to time we'll take a look at how to restore old instruments and components to truly like-new appearance. It's not as easy as you might imagine, but it's super rewarding when you get it right. Occasionally, everything goes right, and a project turns out exactly how you pictured it, like this complete frame-off restoration of my 1970 GMC Sierra Grande custom camper that I did entirely here in the shop, except for the paint and the machine work. And sometimes things go horribly wrong, but the failure postmortems are some of the most entertaining and informative features, so I don't shy away from it when things go wrong. You might as well learn from my mistakes at the same time as I'm doing it. Because in the end, even a failure is just an opportunity to learn something and to try something new. And as you might have guessed from the rather homespun production values, which lend me authenticity, this is my first hosted YouTube video. Now, I'm no YouTube guru, but I have a hunch that when you're new like this, the early likes and subscribes matter all the more. And actually, it helps determine if anyone else will even see this thing. So you really have a massive amount of power at your disposal if you think about it. And so if you'd be so kind as to consider using that power for good, click the like and subscribe button so you'll find out when these new episodes come out. Because I assure you that as a new channel, they will otherwise be completely lost and they'll never show up in your feed again. So, as always, I leave you with my sincere thanks for stopping by the shop, and I hope to see you next time. Hi, my name is Dave, and I have an LED problem.